Welcome to Grounds for Conversations. I'm Amber Noble. It's difficult to find common ground when we focus on things we disagree about. But if we take a step back, we realize that we all have things to learn. Grounds for Conversations is a podcast where we dive into a conversation about Scripture, looking at the story in its entirety. This is for the believer, the questioner, the invested, and the searching. I invite you to join the conversation. Also, at the end of this podcast, stick around for an extra shot, a conversation where we discuss everything about nothing. Welcome back to another episode of Grounds for Conversations. I'm your hostess, Amber Noble, and today, again, I have my guest, Jason Mauck. Jason, thanks for coming back.
Well, thank you for having me back. I love getting to be here and hang out with you. It's so much fun.
I know. I'm glad last time didn't freak you out. So
nope. Freak out. Come on, man. Let's do it.
So today I want to talk about something that I think is really a topic that people have different opinions of. And I think we're entitled to an opinion, but there's also a fact, right?
Sure.
Like I can say, well, my opinion of the sky is that it's not blue, but the reality is it's blue.
Still blue.
Right. So I want to talk about the Sabbath.
Yeah.
And what that means. And that's, people get afraid of that word. And I think sometimes they get afraid of that because we live in a country where people don't take breaks.
No.
People don't rest.
And we don't reward that.
Absolutely.
What do we reward? Work, baby.
Right.
And the more you work, the more you're worth. And so.
Absolutely. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about Sabbath. This is something that I know that you've really been studying out. We've talked a little bit about this offline. What is Sabbath? What does that word mean?
Man, to me, the word Sabbath is this idea and this invitation from God to rest. I mean, it started literally in the 10 Commandments. Like I was reading, Exodus 20, it says in verse 8, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy, that 6 days you labor and do all your work, but on the seventh day is the Sabbath to the Lord. It's this day that God said to rest in me and rest in who I am and to take a break from all the work that we do and take that time for Him.
So the commandments started in the 10 Commandments, but the example, wouldn't you agree, started in creation?
All the way back to the very beginning.
Yeah, because we're made as mirror image of Christ, right?
Yeah, totally.
And God said, let us create man, male and female in our image. And in that process, when He was talking, He said our, so we know that the Holy Spirit, Jesus, present from the beginning. But there is this idea that God created rest for Himself. And I read that somewhere one time and I thought, wow, that's pretty profound to think that the creator of all that doesn't need to take a nap, that does not sleep. The Bible says that He does not sleep. He does not take His eyes off of us. He still created a place of rest.
Yeah.
And we think rest means sleep, but it doesn't always, right? So if God created that and then He gives the commandments to the Hebrew children, I think sometimes we think that was just for them. It's like, well, that was a thing of the Old Testament.
Yeah.
The Sabbath was something that needed to be put in place for the Jews, but this is 2022. We're in the United States. Like that doesn't apply. So I want to talk a little bit about that.
Oh man, I'd love to unpack that part of it.
Please, let's do.
Because to me, like if we go down that road, and let's just go down that road since we're there.
Yeah.
The 10 Commandments, right? God's top 10. If David Letterman was doing the top 10 show still, right? Late night, David Letterman. Haven't heard that name in a while, have you? Right? The Sabbath was in the top 10. And if we take all of the other top 10 commandments that He gave us, there's none of them that we would question that God's changed His mind on.
Right.
I mean, has He changed His mind on not committing adultery?
Nope.
Not stealing?
Nope.
Not murdering?
Nope.
No other gods before Him?
Nope. No
Sabbath.
lying. Right. Sabbath. And so then it's just like.
Why Sabbath? Why do we give a pass on Sabbath, but we think that God's intention for the other 9 is still good for us today, but that one has somehow changed?
Okay. Well, so let me give you I've thought about this a little bit. If we look at what God did in those first 6 days.
Yeah.
and we see the magnitude of creation, and it's like, wow, that was dope. That's amazing. Look at what he did. And then on the seventh day, he rested. We see that as less productive. We see that as, well, the end.
Yeah.
And we don't see it as a recharge or a restart or a bonus for doing the 6 days. We see it as the 6th day kind of ended, right?
Sure.
Because production was done. And therefore, I think it's easy for us, especially I think in the Western world, to dismiss that 7th day as valuable.
Sure.
And so then it's easy to dismiss that commandment as valuable because it's like, well, what is this? That means something different to me than it does to you. And really, does it? Like, should it? Let me say it that way. Should it mean something different?
To me, Sabbath, to me, where I've kind of finally landed is, and some of it, like I confess, like I'm an Enneagram 3. I'm an achiever. Like I like to get stuff done. That's where I land and feel most fulfilled. And so maybe part of that's what shaped it. But Sabbath for me, I've determined is part of being productive because I've learned to just make that part of my lifestyle to be productive. That without seeing the Sabbath as productive, man, I can't do everything else that I've called to do when I don't take the time to unplug and find rest.
Right.
I recognize that man, I become impatient. I become very frustrated very easy. I become too tired and unable to focus and do the work that I've been called to do. And so for me, I actually feel like part of it is by doing Sabbath rest and taking a day to unplug. I'm actually being productive because I'm setting myself up to actually be successful in those other moments because I've taken the time to refresh and recharge. Kind of like a battery. Like if you don't charge it up, eventually the phone dies. And somewhere along the way, we can keep taking little bursts to try to get it going, but without getting it back up to where it's fully charged. I think that's why we live in a world that's stressed out, that's more anxious than it's ever been, more depressed than it's ever been. Because we live in a world that's not moving. We look at the Bible and we kind of use that lifestyle as our measure, except the problem is they didn't move at the pace that we did in the Bible.
Right.
They didn't have to work 40, 50, 60-hour weeks and go do this other stuff.
Right.
It was all a lifestyle and part of the way they moved.
Right. Well, you see some of that, like, remember, I think we've talked about this like years ago. In Haiti, we learned that because they stopped working when the sun started setting because many of those people didn't have electricity. So it was a sun up to sundown, but even not then. They would stop in the afternoon, the heat of the day, but they produced a lot.
Yeah.
They got a lot done in a short amount of time because there was a value put on the quality and not the quantity of time.
Totally.
Okay, so you're a runner.
I love it.
And you run all the time, which I am not a runner in any form or fashion. But could you say that that's something that you've learned as is growing yourself as a runner? You have to find places to rest so that your body regenerates.
Oh, completely. In fact, like for me, like I found on days when I go on my long run, like an 8 to 10 mile run,
that's ridiculous.
I mean, it's just, it sounds ridiculous. Like I'll totally agree at first, but man, there's something to me that's so rhythmic and restful to go out there and just get lost in a train of thought while I'm running.
Well, that's my fear. I'll get lost and then not know where I'm at. It's like, I was in deep thought and now I think I'm in a different state.
I ran the wrong way. And so, yeah, but when I run and I push like that, I always, almost always end up feeling tired and wanting to take a nap a couple, 2-3 hours later. I mean, athletes do it all the time. You look at athletes and the way they push their body in training, like part of what they schedule in are daily naps. In between all the workouts and the exercise, part of the rhythm is taking time to literally take a nap and rest.
Well, maybe this is for a different podcast, but I don't run and I still need to take naps. So I don't know.
Perfect. That's all right.
No. Okay. So you said a day. Now I've heard, and I'm not discrediting people for saying, look, I'm trying to find time. But I've heard people say that, oh, well, my Sabbath is just a couple hours on a Saturday. Yeah. Now, if we go to scripture, it was a day. And actually, Jewish culture celebrates Sabbath from sunup to sundown. Yeah. Right?
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Like the entire day. How do you feel like that pertains? I mean, I definitely have an opinion, but I would love to know your opinion on that.
Wow. Oh man, I think here would be where I would land. I still, personal conviction, I still take one day a week to unplug.
Well, what does that mean? Okay, so is it unplugging? And this is where I think the waters get muddy, and I want to talk about it.
Sure.
Unplugging from your work that you get paid for to do the work that you don't get paid for.
Yeah.
Like, let's be honest, we don't, in our culture, create enough margin. So we work 5-6 days a week, and then the day or 2 days that we're off, like majority of people work Monday through Friday, and then you have Saturday, Sunday off, and a lot of us go to church on Sunday. If you work for a church, you work on Sunday. So your day off, you're getting yard work done, getting the housework done. You're going, just to get everything ready to go back into the work week. Would that be considered Sabbath? What does that look like?
Yeah.
Like, is God expecting us to have a day where we check out of responsibility? That doesn't mean we sleep all day. That doesn't mean we just, veg out and watch 20 episodes of something on Netflix. Like,
No.
what does that mean?
Oh man, I think for me, I think a lot of it is going to be defined by your personality and who you are. I mean, for somebody me that's a little more introverted, it's going to be, a day of unplugging from my work responsibilities and taking time to spend time with my wife, because that's something that for me I find restful. Like I just enjoy hanging out with her and spending time with her. It's going to be going on a long run on my day off. It's going to be watching a movie that we like to watch, or it's going to be reading a book or going roping for me. Those are things that leave me feeling rested. But for somebody that's more extroverted, man, a rest may be going out to dinner with a group of friends, because for an extrovert, you get energized being around people and hanging out. And that's restful for you to invest in those relationships and be able to unplug from some of the responsibilities of work.
Do you think then it would be fair to say that it's not about what you do, it's about disengaging from what you're required to do?
I would. I think that's essentially, I think it's a combo of both. And here's why I say that. Because I think Sabbath is more than just an invitation to rest. I think it's an invitation to rest by trusting God.
Right.
And I think for some of us, myself included, I'll just throw myself under the bus. A lot of times when I go beyond what I need to do for work, it's honestly because I feel the need to make something happen for God. Instead of just trusting.
Like he needs you.
Like he needs me. Like if I don't, then this person's life is going to fall apart if I don't show up. And therefore, it's all going to be on me, and it's going to be my fault, and they're going to hate me forever, and they're going to hate Jesus, and then they're going to leave their faith, and pretty soon, like we've gone down this spiral that makes us God. And so, to me, I think it's not just an invitation to sit down and rest. I think it's an invitation to trust God that I've done my part, and I'm going to trust you with the rest. I mean, and to me, I take that all the way back to in Exodus. Man, I can't remember this specific scripture, but I think it was in Exodus 16, if I remember right, because when he was giving them manna, and in the 6 days, he said, you can go out and collect manna, but on the 6th day, what did he tell them to do?
Collect double.
Double.
Right.
And then you read in that story where some of them didn't do it.
Well, because they didn't trust.
They didn't trust.
Right.
And they felt like I need to work.
Right.
Rather than trust that God's going to provide for me in this moment.
Well, I think that goes back, and that would be another great topic to talk about, but that goes back to completely going, can I trust God in the things I've yet to see? And the answer is yes, if you can see where he's always been faithful. But it's that slave mentality that they still had coming out of Egypt, going, well, we had to fight for what we had there, and they're not seeing where God had delivered them. But you're right. He said, look, I'm taking this serious.
Yep.
Like because if they did it on day 3, they took extra. Day 4, the Bible said it was smelly and covered in maggots. But on the 6th day, he promised, like, it's not going to be covered in maggots. It's not going to stink. and it's going to be great for tomorrow.
The same thing that went bad every other day of the week didn't on that last day.
Because the Sabbath was that important to God.
And to me, that's where I would take it to the step to say, I don't think for many of us we can truly rest because we don't truly trust God.
Wow, that's good.
I don't think we can rest if we don't have trust in God. And that's why I think Sabbath starts to become so uncomfortable for us, because there's still that little part of us like Adam and Eve that we want to be like God.
Yeah.
And instead of doing what he's asked us to do, we want to decide what we think is best. I think that's why we wrestle with Sabbath so much.
Yeah.
Is because it requires us to not just rest, but it really requires us to trust God. I mean, we're both in ministry, so we get the weight of it. Man, people call us because their marriage is falling apart, their life is falling apart, this has happened. I understand there's some real emergencies. Somebody ends up in the hospital, their life is on the line. There are some of those moments that happen, and maybe this sounds extremely calloused, but man, people will call in that time and be like, man, my marriage is falling apart, and I need you to help me fix it. And it's like suddenly their marriage didn't just fall apart today.
Mm-mm.
Their marriage has been falling apart for the last 10 years.
Right.
And so I'm not going to fix this in this moment.
Well, in reality is you can't fix it.
I can't.
And I do value the fact that people see people in ministry as people that can help lead them down the right path.
Yeah.
But what is that phrase? A lack of emergency or a lack of planning on your part does not constitute as an emergency on mine. And it does. I don't mean, like you said, to sound calloused, but there is a point where when we don't create margin in our life, when we don't invest in what's important, when we don't look at the big picture.
Yeah.
When you go to the doctor and they're like, you're going to die of a heart attack if you don't change your diet. And you're like, well, I don't understand what the problem is. Well, you've eaten fried chicken every day for the last 30 years. There's the problem. You've got to look ahead at the decisions today will impact tomorrow and will impact down the road. And so it's not just taking time to rest, it's planning for that. It's creating, if you've got to get XYZ done in a time frame so that on that Sabbath you can rest. Yeah. Then you do it.
Yep. But that's the part for us. Like you think about, I don't know where people are at in life, because obviously there's a lot of people that are listening that maybe they're not in ministry, but there are people that we care for, that we love,
right?
That often find themselves in a space where, man, something's happened and they call on us because they need us. And then what do we do in those moments where we're tired and we feel like, man, I don't have any more to give right now. And yet we try to keep operating out of that space. And it's so challenging when you're already empty.
Right.
To find a way to care for people. It's you as leaders, as whoever we are in life, wherever we're at, we can only pour into others what we've created the space and poured into ourselves. And somewhere, if all it is a constant going out, man, to me, it's those reminders that we are limited. I think God's given us limits, and that's one of the ways he speaks to us.
Yeah. I think we got to recognize seasons too, because my children are adults. You have one that's an adult, one that's pretty close to that.
Yeah.
But there was a season when our kids weren't adults. Oh. And I think about the young moms with the toddlers that are listening to this going, Sabbath, what is that?
Yeah, I can't even get 5 minutes in the bathroom without somebody sticking their hand under the door.
Exactly. So where is my break? I don't get to clock out. And I think that that's a valid, that's a voice that needs to be heard. And that is definitely grounds for conversations right there going, hey, like, what does that Sabbath look like for you? It may look different for you in this season than it does then. Maybe on your Sabbath, it's a day where it's not focused on cleaning house. It's not focused on those things. It's you're taking time to do something different because you teach your kids those habits.
Yeah.
When they see mom, when they see dad, stop and invest in family. I'm not talking about the grocery list, the cleaning, but the stopping and going, let's take lunch to the park. Let's eat in the backyard. Let's everybody sleep in the living room tonight. Little things, which is like, that's not Sabbath. It's the taking time apart from the normal and making something special and allowing yourself to check out. Yeah. I think that for young moms and dads, it doesn't always feel like they get a day, but if they're intentional about it, they can have that.
You can find spaces. I agree with you. And there were times when the kids were younger and between little kids at home and between life at work and playing sports and this and this and this, like you do have to find those spaces. It may be, man, we're going to sit down at dinner tonight, turn the TV off, put the phones down and just have a conversation at the dinner table. It may be finding 30 minutes in the morning where your husband takes care of the kids and gives you 30 minutes in the morning to just do whatever you need to do.
Right.
So that you can have some space. I think it's permission from men to suddenly feel the need somewhere that, yes, we're called to provide, but at the same time, it's freedom from feeling like if I don't give my family the life that I never got, then I'm suddenly going to be a failure as somebody trying to provide, and recognize somewhere the gift that we give our family is more than just the money that we make and the things that we buy. It's us.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
How do we do that? We make time for us with them. I mean, I just think that's a...
Well, it goes back to what you said about pouring out when you're not having time poured in. There is something so valuable about making sure we're letting our cup be full by the Lord. Starting our day, keeping that in front of us. And we all have the same 24 hours.
Yeah.
We do. And I mean, I tell young adults and students this all the time. No excuses. Look at your phone. What's your screen time been?
Oh, yeah.
Like, because you can see that on there. It's like, whoa, I didn't realize I had. Well, yeah, because you can sit there and flip through, and we're all guilty of it, right? So put that away. Set goals. Make a plan. I mean, if you have to have a vision board somewhere in your house, set goals of, these are some things I want to accomplish, but I have 7 days this week.
Yep.
And in that 7 days, I have to have time to decompress, check out from these needs, from these accomplishments, from these goals, and just recharge and get fresh perspective. And I feel like I'm the worst at making sure I have that, but I know that when I do, my perspective for the week coming up is so much better.
Yeah.
Like my thoughts are clearer, that the passion for what I'm doing is clearer and untainted, And so I feel like that is huge. I spent a lot of time studying about the posture of God and the different postures you see played out in Scripture.
Yeah.
And when I think about rest, I think, and I don't know why this is a visual that I get, but I think about when my kids were like 2 and 3 years old and they were fighting naps. Like, take that 1.5, 2-year-old, like that fighting.
Why did we ever fight naps?
I don't know. But just when they weren't old enough to really explain, to talk, but they were old enough to push off of you and like, I don't want to do this. I remember, because I had one that loved to sleep and I had one that was not going to miss the party.
Yeah.
Even though there wasn't a party. Okay. But that moment when there was that, I'm done fighting. I'm done trying to stop the inevitable. I'm going to lean in and I'm going to let you hold me and I'm going to let it all go. And just in studying this whole thing about Sabbath, about what that rest looks like, I just got that picture in my head of that toddler going, it's a lean in. I'm going to lean in, trusting that you've got me, so that when the rest season is done, I can go back to doing what I was doing. You're not going to let life happen without me. And that was, thinking about that, I remember them being so afraid they were going to miss something and just fighting to keep eyes open. When it's life, you're going to be okay. You're going to wake up and those toys are going to still be here. That, whatever you were doing, that's still going to be there. So as an adult, taking that posture and recognizing that maybe your Sabbath starts with just that, a posture of leaning in and trusting God to hold you until it's time for you to go back and do what you were doing. Not that life's going to pass you by. Not that everything great's going to happen in that moment of you checking out, of you taking a break, of you shutting off all electronics and just chilling out. Like nothing, you're not going to miss anything. And I think that it's recognizing, and you said it earlier, it's trust. It's, I can trust you, God, that in the 7 days you've given me, if I give you that one, my next 6 days are going to be so much more productive than if I would have kept that one from you.
Which
Because
is the
I'm
same,
rested,
yeah,
right?
and it's the same thing with everything else we do. Another podcast for another time. Tithing, right?
Right.
It's that idea that, man, I can do more with 90% when I trust that 10 with God, and whatever that might look like, and be generous on top of that. It's trust that to me, kind of like you said, fear is what drives it. Fear of missing out on what? Like at the end of the day,
Right.
what if you miss out on one opportunity here or one opportunity there? Because the reality is, whether we acknowledge it or not, by staying busy, we're always missing out on something.
Absolutely.
Andy Stanley, I think, is the one who said it. At least I'm giving him credit for it. He said that every yes that you give away is a no to something else.
Absolutely, it is.
And so, I mean, I've had to think about that, because every time I say yes to taking care of this need that somebody else has, I'm saying no to resting. I'm saying no to meeting my wife's needs or meeting my daughter's needs, or saying no to taking care of myself. And again, like you said, man, there are moments and seasons where we do go beyond what some of those are. But if your yes is always given away to somebody else, and then at the end of the day, you're missing out on taking care of yourself and missing the moments around you. And so that fear of missing out to me is just so funny, because we all get caught in that hamster wheel of we look at everybody else. I think social media is probably one of the worst things that we have, because we see everybody's highlight reels,
right?
And we see their vacation to Bora Bora or wherever they're going, and we think, man, I'm missing out. How come I don't have that kind of life? Or they're getting to do this, or they're off doing that, or their kids here, or.
But notice what we're envious of: their vacation, their rest, right? Like make time, and it may not look the same.
No.
But I think you said something pretty cool. Maybe we all need to learn to say no.
No. And guess what? No is a complete sentence.
It is. And you know, it's the same in English as it is in Spanish. Fun fact.
Bilingual. Fact. Come on. You bilingual. Yes.
So yeah, no, it doesn't have to have attitude. It doesn't have to be abrasive. No. Just no. So what? Okay. So for a person that is looking to say, okay, I'm spent, I'm burnt out, I'm burning the candle at both ends. How do I, as a follower of Jesus, where do I start on making time, finding Sabbath?
Yeah.
What would be your answer to that person? I know I'm throwing some trick ones at you.
I love those. I love those, though. To me, I think one of the first things would be, what are things that you do that fills your cup up? Rather than feel like you're pouring out, to me, one of the best places to start is, what is something that fills you up?
But I think not just fills you up. I think people have to be real with themselves. Not that fills you up and it's valid.
Yeah.
Not surface. Not I want. Not something that like feeds insecurity, but like true value. True value.
Yeah.
What fills you up? What meets those needs? Yeah,
what meets that need that you have at the end of the day, so that you can live with a better trust and less fear of missing out on something.
Can you give some examples of what that would be for you?
Yeah, for me, the things that fill my cup up the most are I take quiet time every morning on purpose, because I pour out so much in other ways during the day that I intentionally wake up before everybody else does, because I like that first hour in the house when it's just quiet. It's just me. It's just my time to spend with the Lord, to spend reading, praying, writing thoughts down. What fills me up is, I love to spend time with family and friends that I'm close with. I don't have a big circle. But the close circle that I have.
Are we in that circle?
You're inside. You're the inner circle, man. You're
like I just put you on the spot.
You're on the spot. Like you're my top 3, like Jesus had, man.
There you go. I love that. I love that.
Like that's something that fills my cup up. Exercise for me fills my cup up. Getting to read and learn. Like I love to learn. And so where I can just take the time to learn more about myself, learn more about others. Those are the things that fill my cup up. When I can learn to shut my brain off and just enjoy taking a nap and not feel guilty about it.
That's awesome.
That
Do you
fills my cup up.
ever wake up from a nap and not know where you're at, know what day it is?
Oh my gosh.
Am I late for class thinking you're still in high school?
It's totally, and usually I'm like drooling somewhere at that point too. Like I've been sleeping so heavy. It's like, what is happening? Yes, it's totally that.
Okay, funny. I got to tell you a story real quick. I was speaking at a church. It was multiple things, and I had time in between a couple sessions to go to my room and take a nap. And I did.
Yeah.
And I slept so hard because I was so nervous about, I mean, really vulnerable here. The group of ladies were very different than me.
Yeah.
And so I was super nervous the night before. So I didn't sleep very well. And so the first session was a morning session and it went great. So then my nerves were able to just rest.
Yeah.
I went back to the hotel room, cranked that air as cold as I could get it. I passed out. I woke up. I didn't know where I was at. I thought I had been kidnapped. I was like, well, they brought me to a nice hotel at least. I mean, like, what is happening here? So confused. My hair was all over the place. My makeup was all on the pillow. Like, I crashed. Yeah. And I didn't know where I was at. I was in a different state. Totally freaked out. But that's such an amazing feeling in a weird way.
Totally one of the most fulfilling feelings and scariest all at the same time.
Where am I? What's going on? Who am I?
No, I love it. So let's think about it this way then. If we're talking about rest, maybe for some people out there, because we kind of had this conversation, talking about somebody that we know, and I've got some other people in my life. They say one of the reasons it's hard to rest is because I can't shut my mind off, or I feel like there's stuff that needs to get done. So how do you recognize when it's time to unplug and rest? What are some triggers for you? Because maybe like I can think of some in my own life, right, and I'll share those too. But what would it be for you where you think, man, when I see myself doing this, I know it's time?
When the grace isn't there. When I struggle finding grace for somebody, like if somebody comes to me and they're like, I'm struggling with this, and my thought is, you're an idiot, or of course you're struggling, because when I become critical of someone else, I realize I've not created that margin, and I have not taken that time of rest for myself.
That's great.
And I also, this is going to sound kind of weird, but I can tell if my rest is not the right kind of rest, because I'm still consumed with what I'm not doing. And that's our friend said that. Yep. Like to me, like going to Bora Bora and just laying in a hammock all day would be the ultimate. But my husband, our friend, he was telling me, and my husband's like, absolutely, I agree. He would hate that because there's nothing to do. And so his definition of nothing is totally opposite of my definition. And he explained to me today, it was so funny, we were talking about it this morning, and he said, because I asked him how Florida was, and he was like 4 days too long. And I'm like, what are you talking about? But he said that when you spend your time doing nothing, he said, I find that all I can think about is what I need to be doing at home. But if I'm going on adventure, if I'm exploring, we're doing something, then I can check out of what I worry about at home and focus on that task. So I think, like you said earlier, you've got to know how you're wired and know what fills you up. But the number one thing for me is I get critical, and then, this might sound weird, I get scared. Yeah. I find myself battling fear about weird things and in weird situations. And I realize, wait a minute, I'm exhausted. Yeah. Whether it's physically, emotionally, spiritually, I'm exhausted. So for me, it is the critical and the fear that trigger. Okay, you've got to take a break.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Because like for me too, I notice it's what goes away is my care for people, and I just start moving into getting stuff done. Right. And I don't think about anymore.
It's heaven or hell. We got to do this.
Yeah. It's like, the cost and the impact that it starts having on people goes away from me, and I just move into it's time to get stuff done mode. And that's when I can tell it's time for me to unplug. When I don't sleep well at night.
Isn't that crazy? When you're not making time for rest, you can't rest.
Yep. I mean,
what a brilliant but crazy statement.
It is. And for me, the other time when I can tell is when I lose motivation. Maybe that's the best way. Because normally I'm pretty driven to get stuff done. And when I lose the motivation to want to do, that's another sign for me that man, it's time for a rest. It's time for a break. It's time for something because I just don't want to do anything anymore.
Yeah. Well, my criticalness can go to being cynical,
Yeah.
which isn't healthy, especially in ministry.
Yeah.
But, not to say anybody is perfect, but the reality is, I think the reason God created it for himself and then required it of his people, and that still stands today, is because he knows we can only do so much. Yeah. But instead of doing a lot of things do a few things really well. Yeah. And that requires that time of rest, that time of checking out.
It does.
When, I know that, and everybody I know that is in ministry or as any type of creative job, people I know who are writers or that, I have a friend that owns a publishing company. Every single one of those people have said that their greatest ideas come after they have been on vacation.
Oh, yeah.
And because they've just checked out. And all of a sudden, it's like that blood starts flowing again in that part of their brain. And they're like, oh, my goodness. And I think that there's something to be said about that. And it's like, you know it and you're knower, but we don't always take the time to do it. And there's a point in time where you will, if we don't teach our brains to shut down, our brains will shut down for us.
They will.
I mean,
it's the way the body's made.
Yes. And I've been reading all this stuff on Alzheimer's and dementia. And a lot of that stuff comes from not learning to let your brain rest and give it the proper nutrients and the proper checkout, basically.
Yep. Totally. Like for me, I would agree with you because I would say the moments where some of the best ideas come to me are not even when I'm sitting at my desk working. Like we talk about being creative. Like everybody has different things that they create. Our world tends to be creating sermons and messages and content that we use to invest in people. And I think some of my most creative content comes in one of three places. It comes when I'm mowing the yard.
You sound like my husband.
Yes.
Because that's him. We used to have land and he would get on
or a tractor, either one.
Yes, he'd get on his riding lawnmower and then he'd come in and be like, I have an idea.
Yep.
Like,
if I can do something like that, to me, whether it's some kind of doing an activity like outdoors where I'm mowing the yard or dragging the arena in just a bunch of circles, is when those ideas come. When I'm running, for whatever reason, again, some of the best ideas come, and this one's going to sound totally weird, but the other one is just that moment in the shower, like where nobody else is distracting me, nobody else is there talking to me. And it's just free space in there. And like
most of the time it's because you don't have music. Yep. You don't have a computer in front of you. At least you shouldn't, but that's, you're checked out.
Checked out. You've unplugged. You've disconnected from some of those things and given your brain the space to, it's so funny because in an effort to be more productive, I actually think we're being counterproductive.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
So here's the other thought I was thinking about that you were talking about too. And maybe this would be a great one to talk about because we can talk a lot about Sabbath. But the other side is just giving people some really practical tools to figure that out.
Yeah.
And so I think one of them is we talk a lot about time management in life. I don't think time management is as big an issue as priority management.
Absolutely.
And if we would manage the priorities in our life and put those things on the calendar first, it would be a lot easier to fill in the spaces and then make it a lot safer to give no's away to other people. Absolutely. I have sometimes people say, hey, can I have this meeting with you at this time? And it's easy for me to say, nope, I got something on the calendar. That something is spending time with my family. Right. That something is, nope, that's actually a couple hours I've set aside to just rest and do some me time.
Right.
They don't need to know that.
Well, and the thing is, there's nothing wrong with that. But be honest, the first time you did that, you felt a little guilty.
Oh, felt totally guilty, felt unproductive, felt all of those things. So if you were going to say, for Amber, if you were going to identify, man, if we're going to move to priority management and I'm going to throw a few priorities in my week every week that help me feel rested and create the margin, what would some of those priorities be?
Okay, so first of all, I think it's super, super important to recognize who you're surrounding yourself around.
That's good.
Because if you're with people who aren't setting goals, you're not going to set goals. Nope. If you're with people who are not putting God first, their family first, who are not looking at, I want to make a difference, I'm going somewhere. Mm-hmm. If you're settling for people who are living life subpar, you're going to struggle getting out of that muck.
Absolutely.
And so I think that for me, it's I feel like I have all my friends are smarter than me. Mm-hmm. All my friends are going further places than I've been. And that drives me.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
So that's a big one. Another one is to make sure that, and this is going to sound silly, I believe in using all your senses.
Yeah.
And so if I do well when things are clean, and I do well when there's good coffee.
Yeah.
Coffee is no longer something that wakes me up. It is the smell. It's the feeling of that cup in my hand. It is. It's an experience. And so if like, say I'm like, I need to just sit down and I need to check out and I want to read this book. I need to make sure that I'm not sitting in a room that there's laundry that needs to be put away. Yeah. For me, I want things picked up. Now, what helps is I keep that picked up, and it's learning to do a little bit every day instead of trying to do it all at once. Yeah. And so it's giving myself the ability to be in comfortable clothes, in with a good cup of coffee. So it's finding what helps me relax.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not going to be like screamo music. It's gonna have. I'm gonna have. What? I know, but like,
but it might be some Dr. Dre.
Yeah, that's if I'm going to clean my house. But if but I'll put on some like real chill jazz, and just to set that atmosphere. Yeah. And then I will open up, just saying, "Okay, God, here it is," and I open up with prayer, that's like so you would in a meeting or in a service. If I'm trying to decompress and get myself at a place where I can receive the healing and the rest I need, I start with a hello, Jesus moment. And I invite him into that because I think so often we try to find a way to check out when we forget the one that wants us to do that the most needs to be included. And so it's like, it's very simple. I'll say things like, Lord, help me to focus on what you need me to focus on right now. Help me to see some things that show me where you've been so good in my life this week. Remind me of how amazingly blessed I am with my husband and my kids. And I know that sounds really kind of cheesy, but I'm going to tell you something. I do that and then I shut up and I just let the Lord speak to me. And I can't tell you how many times like I'll have thoughts about the week. I'll fall asleep, which is crazy. You know, I'm praying and I just fall asleep and
guess what? It's okay.
It is okay. And then I'm like, my perspective is set up. So that's what I do. For me, it's making sure I'm surrounded by the right people. It is making sure the environment in which I'm trying to rest is restful. Yep. And it's pleasing to my senses. And then it is making sure I open with inviting the Holy Spirit into the moment. That's how I do it.
No, I love it. Like to me, like that sounded so great to hear the way you talk about that time, even with the Lord that you spend though, inviting him into that day, because part of to me, what I was hearing you say that I thought was so great is that it still required a space of nothing else happening so that you could reflect.
Right.
And I think that's the part that we lose in life is we don't stop long enough to really, we experience life or we allow life to happen to us, but I don't think we often create enough space to think about what's really happening in our life. Right. And to, like you said, to break it down, man, Lord, what am I missing that you're trying to show me in this moment? Or man, yesterday just didn't seem to go the way I thought it should have went. What was wrong with the day? Where did I miss what you were up to? Right. And without those kind of priority spaces in your life, it is easy to fill it up with everything else.
Well, you learn. And then you go, okay, wow, I see a pattern here. I need to, in my time, I need to work. I need to let that be something that I focus on. Yeah. So then you come out of that rest going, all right, something I see that's a pattern for me is control. And so I need to back up a little bit. I need to not be so aggressive here. Maybe I'm apathetic in this area and I need to be a little bit more aggressive. Yeah. I'm putting way too much time into this and that it's doing nothing for my life. Yeah. So, it's like, well, and I mean, we all get caught in these different series and stuff. And it's like, how much time are you spending on watching somebody else's life played out in Hollywood?
In social media, as you follow all these people on the gram or Facebook or Snapchat or TikTok or wherever, and we watch everybody else's life, but we don't stop to think about our own and where we're at. And so to me, I just think it's a great moment to pause and spend some time priority, Sabbath rest. I think that's part of what made Sabbath so powerful is there was suddenly this space that was created by stopping and making some space for the Lord to speak into our life about what's really happening and where we're at.
Well, in the Bible, during that time, it was not only a sin, it was against the law for Jews to work on that day. So it's easy when it's forced on you, but it becomes a heart issue when it's not and you make a choice.
Yeah.
So it's not the law anymore. Well, it may not be the law of the land, but it's still the law of God.
And it's the law, it's the law of what's best for you. Like Jesus,
the law of nature.
The law of nature. And it was what Jesus said. Jesus said in Mark 2:27 that he said the Sabbath was made for man.
Right.
It was made for us. Like God didn't make it as a rule to be followed. He made it for us.
For humanity.
For humanity. For every one of us. It starts in
creation. Yep. It was never meant to be another rule.
It was never meant to be a rule.
You've got to have this.
Yep.
You have to sleep. You have to rest. You have to check out.
Yeah.
Well,
so good.
I think it's awesome. I can't wait. I know that we've got a couple other things that I would love for you to come back for us to discuss. And I have so enjoyed this.
I have too. Thank you so
Jason.
much for letting me be a part.
Absolutely. Y'all stay tuned for the extra shot. I'm Amber Noble, and you've been listening to Grounds for Conversations. To ensure you don't miss our next podcast, make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. Don't forget to hang around for an extra shot. Welcome back to Extra Shot. Again, I have my friend Jason Mauck here with me. Okay, this is a fun one today.
Can't wait.
Both of us growing up in church, I felt like this was a fantastic, absolutely, cut your teeth on those pews.
Yes.
The topic I thought that would be great for us to talk about is cringe-worthy moments in the church. Now, before you get started, I want to preface this. Everyone listening that is ready to get offended because you think we're attacking your church, calm down. All right. I think that you got to learn to laugh at some things because every person that runs the church is human and every human makes mistakes.
Totally.
And there are so many things that happened in church for me growing up. It's a miracle that I even go to church now, you know?
Oh, man.
But we can laugh about
it,
right?
Totally. Or the fact that our kids still want to be around church after hearing all our stories and having their own experiences, still want to do this.
Absolutely.
Oh,
okay,
man.
So go ahead and start. Give me a cringe-worthy moment for you.
Cringe-worthy moment for me in church would be the random moments on nights where they would do open mic testimony nights.
Open mic testimony.
You know, like where they would say, hey, anybody got a testimony? The pastor would walk around with a wireless mic and put it in somebody's hand, and then all bets are off because you no longer have control of the microphone.
What about when they just let them come to the stage?
Oh, that's...
So then they're standing there
in
up
front
on
of
the
everybody.
stage, and what are you going to do, push them?
Yeah, I mean
maybe you should.
There's a couple of them, I'm pretty sure. The best thing, everybody in the room would have been like, man, push them off the stage.
Okay, so let me tell you, in my church as a teenager, there was a testimony night, and there was a woman. I will not say her name because she may still be alive. I don't know.
Is she listening to this podcast, though?
Highly doubt it. If she is, good for you. Yeah. Good for you. She had two kids in youth ministry at the same time as me.
Yeah.
One was just a little bit younger than me, and the other one was a lot younger than me. But she stood up, walked up onto the stage, grabbed, do you remember those microphones that had the fuzzy things on the outside?
Yeah, and different colored ones, and nobody ever changed them out. Talk about cringeworthy.
Yes. Whoa. So she grabs one of those, and that has the long cord.
Yes.
So she's walking back and forth across the stage, and she is talking about how she hates her husband. He disgusts her.
Oh, gosh.
She wants nothing to do with him. That she goes to the movies by herself. Now, this is before like cell phone tracking and all that kind of stuff. So she would say she had to work late, and she just go to the movies. So she didn't have to be with him. And she sat there for like 15 minutes and talked about all the things about him that she was disgusted by. But then she turns
Was he in the room?
And so were her kids.
Oh,
Yes.
no.
And of course, I'm that awkward. In awkward moments, I giggle, right? Because I'm like, I don't know what to do. And so she's like, but I really feel like God's changed my heart and I'm ready to work on our marriage. And I'm looking at him going, I don't think he is.
I think you just created more problems.
You just totally embarrassed him in front of everyone. And the pastor's standing there like a bump on a log going, And so, but then he just kept letting people do it.
Nope, can't do it. Yeah. That's why cringeworthy for me, because I had an experience where a lady was going to her lady doctor and may have overshared the details with everybody in church.
Why is it that we think that because it's our brothers and sisters in Christ, they need details?
I think some people just overshare because they get nervous. And they just start saying things, and before they realize it, it's like, oh, that came out of my mouth. I think other people, I mean, come on, let's be honest. You've been around somebody that's like that. Like
Absolutely.
You can see the look of terror in their face when they're done. Or I think other people just like to hear themselves talk. And if they're talking about themselves, it's even more, which is so funny to me because I thought testimonies were to point people to Jesus.
Right.
But that's why it makes me cringe inside, is because it's like, you don't have to share all those details. Like, there's nobody in the room. Keep it to yourself, between you and Jesus. Just tell us.
And your OBGYN or whatever.
Cringeworthy moment for you.
So you said testimony. What about the cringeworthy moment when they would have open night song?
No.
People would, who has a special?
They do. It's not in the
special.
Bars. It's called karaoke.
Yes, it's not special. And back growing up, they had cassette tapes, and these people would keep them in their pocket or their purse, ready to go. And they would give it to the sound guy, and they would get mad at the sound guy that it wasn't cued to the right song. And he's like, "Look, I don't get paid enough to be here." And then they would sing the song, and it was awful.
It was like one of the people who opened in the beginning of American Idol that somebody's mama didn't tell you couldn't really sing, and they should have.
Yes. What made me laugh is when they would sing with the ones that had words.
Oh.
So it's like they were just kind of singing along.
Yes.
And you're just like, why am I here? Why are we doing this? Okay,
Man.
Another cringeworthy moment.
Cringeworthy moment for me would be as a teenager growing up in church. I'm sorry if this is you and you're of this age, but there was an elderly lady in the church that had more facial hair than I did at age 16. And I might have been a little jealous, and yet it was still cringeworthy all at the same time. Like, surely was there not somebody in her life that could have said, hey, like, I love you.
I know. Shame on you for not helping your mom or your granny or your aunt out.
Somebody, please. Somebody had to love that woman enough to say, hey, come on over. Let's go have a beauty day. Well, she had to have
seen it. First of all, how do you look in the mirror and not see? There's one thing that you got a little hair on your chin, but when you can braid it.
Not by the hair on my chin.
Do something.
Oh, man, please go do something about it. Like, to me, Korea, that was kind of just one of those moments to me that was so, man, I didn't even know what to do in that moment. Like, I feel bad and jealous for all at the same time as a boy who wanted to grow facial hair. Maybe that's why I have such a beard.
You're like, I'm going to show those women up in church. I can do this.
I will not be outdone.
I will not be outdone by Greta.
Oh, never.
Okay, so what about another cringeworthy moment? I always feel bad for first-time visitors in churches that they make them stand up.
No, please.
What about...
Do people still do this?
Yeah, there are still churches that not only make you stand up, they make you say your name. No. Guess what? If I'm visiting your church and I'm an extrovert and you have me stand up and you ask what my name is, I'm going to give you a completely different name.
Yep.
And I'm coming up with the whole story. Like, I'm on
just
parole.
Got out of prison.
Yeah, and then like blah, blah, blah. I would just, yeah.
That's why I have the teardrop tattoo.
Yes.
Come on.
Absolutely.
Oh,
so
yeah,
that's cringeworthy.
Totally cringeworthy. Like, why would you do that to a new person? Like, I mean, there's nobody in the space there that would ever feel comfortable doing that. So let's isolate you and call you out in front of everybody.
Extrovert or introvert? I don't know anybody who likes it.
Oh, introvert, like I wouldn't even stand up. Like you'd never even get me to raise my hand and acknowledge that I was here for the first time. Like,
right.
I'm going to probably disappear right after that and slip out to the bathroom and never come back. Right. I'm out. Cringe-worthy moment.
Cringe-worthy moment. And I love churches. I have total respect for churches that do liturgical worship and community communion. I love it. The communion piece, as long as I'm first, because I'm a germ freak.
You mean the cup where everybody takes a turn drinking out of it?
I can't.
Nope.
Unless I'm number one.
Me neither.
Now, what about where they dip the bread?
Intinction, where they dip it, like I can dip it all day long. Like I don't even care if there's a piece of bread floating in there. Like that doesn't bother
that
me at all.
happened to me.
Yeah, that don't bother me
This
because at
guy
least
in
it's
front
my
of me,
bread
he was
and I'm
dipping
dipping
it like it was chips and salsa, and it breaks off, and so it's just floating around the cup, and I'm like, what am I supposed to do?
Oh,
so
man.
I, with my bread, move his bread over so I could dunk it in.
Oh, no.
Another cringeworthy moment.
Another cringeworthy moment is where you were sitting at a church service and they would just randomly call out song numbers for people to start playing and singing. When you had the old hymnals in the back of the pew, did you ever have one of those moments?
Oh, yes. Song 437, Free at Last, or whatever.
So let's be honest. How much of that, when you were ever growing up in that, you were picking song numbers, simply trying to find one that somebody wouldn't know and couldn't sing, or you were picking something that you could find a way to make it seem really awkward for everybody as they were having to sing
I
it?
never yelled out a song. What we did, though, we had a lot of evangelists that came, and so we had revivals all the time.
Yeah.
I grew up in a very charismatic church, and so cringeworthy moment, evangelists that felt like they didn't need to leave, that God hadn't released them, so they would want to do a 3-week of revival, and I'm like, oh my goodness. We would look in the hymn book and we would say the hymn and we would say under the bed. Yeah. And we would laugh and laugh. I will meet you in the morning under the bed. What a friend we have in Jesus, under the bed. And when you're a kid and you're not allowed to laugh, that's the funniest thing in the world.
And then when you do laugh, your mom turns around and looks at you. Oh, and you know when that look comes.
You better go to the altar afterwards because you're going to die.
Man. And you still might even when you get home.
Absolutely.
Oh, man.
Absolutely. Another cringeworthy moment.
Cringeworthy moment. Man, I know some people do this. I know in some cultures it exists, but I cringe every time I see somebody pull some money out of their wallet and try to make change of an offering plate if it's getting pushed around. I cringe just a little bit, man. But I know that's cultural. Like, I get it. I understand the space. I understand the time where we were at, where people used a lot more cash than what they did. I still cringe just a little bit inside.
It makes me giggle a little bit. What about the old offering that were like bags that they had them on the long sticks? Do you remember that?
It looked like a magic trick where you were going to pull a rabbit out of it when you were passing those around. Oh, yeah. Total cringe-worthy moment. To me, that one gets me. Cringe-worthy moment. Man, this one might get a little personal for some people. But I cringe. You and I grew up in this culture. The whole purity push that was kind of this true love waits, and if you have sex before you're married, I kiss dating goodbye, and if you every time you did this, you're giving part of yourself away, and so
which there's so much truth to that, but like let's not make people feel that have done that feel like they're already in hell.
We never closed the gap on that one to say there's grace and space for you, and for all things to be made new.
Absolutely.
So maybe really the cringeworthy thing for me is the way guilt was used
in every sense of the word, impurity, and the way you served, and the way you gave. Absolutely. Okay, less spiritual, cringeworthy moment: potlucks.
Oh, ooh. Like my stomach churns a little bit thinking about them. Like I'll confess, I feel very. I struggle with potlucks. Like, I gotta know who made what before I'm gonna go dipping in somebody's potluck. I'm sorry. If you're out there thinking, man, we just had a church potluck and I saw you going through the line. Yes. And I was judging each dish to decide which one I'm gonna take. Just gonna be honest, throwing that out there right now.
So in high school, our senior pastor's wife, I went to her and I said, she was also the women's ministry leader.
Oh, yeah.
And I told her a good idea because we had potlucks once a month. Sure. That a good idea would have people bring their recipe or put their name in front of it so that if you liked it so much, you could get the recipe. And she was like, Amber, that's a great idea. I had no desire. I was in high school. I didn't want anybody's recipe. There were just some people that I knew had a lot of cats and that were just kind of gross. And I wanted to make sure I did not hit up that dish.
Nope.
I went to the KFC bucket first, right? Because like KFC's clean, but in your mind, you're like, it came from a restaurant. Yep. My mom, anything my mom made.
Yes.
And there were my friends' parents. Mm-hmm. But there were people when they started doing that. Of course, there were dishes. People were like, I need to know how you made that. But there were dishes that stopped getting eaten because people knew, oh, that's from crazy cat Patricia over there that she's got 30 cats.
Oh, yes.
No.
I can't. Like for me, those potlucks were one of those things that Yeah, I can't throw down at like.
There was some special things about that. Just the idea of gathering. The community was amazing.
Eating together.
Absolutely. The best sweet tea ever under the sun.
And the further south you go, the sweeter it gets.
Absolutely. Like that is, real quick, where's the best sweet tea you've ever had?
Best sweet tea, McAllister's.
McAllister's has good sweet tea. You know who else has good sweet tea? Chicken Express.
What?
Okay.
I've never tried
You drink 2 cups, you will have diabetes, though.
Oh.
It is so sweet. Phil has to do half and half, and it's still too sweet for him. But McAllister's tea. I forget about that.
I do too. That's kind of one of those places they completely lose me.
Sweet tea.
And I totally forget about those.
I need to go to McAllister's tomorrow.
Like now I have this desire for some of their sweet tea.
Yeah.
Look what we're doing in this moment.
Okay. Cringeworthy moments in church.
Cringeworthy moments in church. And again, I understand it was cultural at the time, but like I'm kind of glad we're past the whole suit and tie thing inside of church. Like I just kind of cringe a little bit about the thought of busting out the polyester suit again to show up in church and wear a suit.
Part of that is because we live in the Houston area and it's so stinking hot.
Oh my goodness. The humidity's already terrible.
It's awful. It's awful.
It's the worst.
So cringeworthy moment for me was when my youth pastor would do these big bring your music, your secular music, and let's burn it.
Yes.
And so everybody would feel condemned, not convicted, condemned oftentimes. Yes. And they would throw everybody would take their allowance and their money that they got from working at their little jobs and buy all their music. And then this is pre like iTunes and all that.
Yep.
So anything you had, either you recorded it off of the radio or you bought a cassette or later on a CD.
Or there was that, you remember that one company that you could order online and you could get 10 CD, for free if you bought these 5. And so you could end up with 15 for, that's how I got my stash.
Well, I got in trouble one time because I ordered the 10 with everybody's name in my family. And so we got it. And then that meant I had to buy 5
for
CD,
each
25.
One. Yeah.
And then I didn't. So we got collection notices and my dad was like, what is going on? And I mean, I had all these.
Sister.
It didn't work. I tried because they were like, well, Amber, you've got like 4 boxes of tapes. And I'm like, yeah, I've got the best music in town. So we would burn our tapes. And then like the next week, I'm like, I have nothing to listen to.
Yeah. I burnt a Beach Boys CD one time at one of those things.
Beach Boys?
I love the Beach Boys. Any Beach Boys fans out there? I mean, come on. The Beach Boys.
My grandpa.
No. So good.
Dude. Beach Boys?
Beach Boys, man.
You're younger than I am.
I know. But there's something about them that I just loved. Along with Chicago.
Okay, you can't even put them. Chicago was like couple skate only. You know? You're at the skating rink. Which, why did our parents drop us off at the skating rink for like 6 hours?
I think that was good.
And knowing that every skating rink in America has that one creepy man that's in his 50s or older that has his shirt unbuttoned the whole way, that skates backwards by himself, doing the guns at you.
Like he's the Mr. Speed Skater extraordinaire.
And he did all the tricks.
I picture somebody like from Dodgeball, or I picture Ricky Bobby, or somebody like that skating around.
The guy in Dodgeball that was in the wheelchair that taught them how to play Dodgeball.
That's exactly.
What was his name?
Man, I can't remember now.
There was a guy that at our skating rink looked like Zach Galifianakis, but his shirt was too tight, and he was like an old Zach like from Masterminds, but his hair was gray.
Yes,
that's what he looked like, and he was there every night for years. And nobody was like, hey, stranger danger or creeper. Yeah. And he was just always there.
So weird.
Yeah, so weird.
Cringeworthy moments would be some of the Christian movies back in the day, like VHS quality Christian movies that would be produced.
You better not be talking about VeggieTales because I love VeggieTales.
No, I won't touch VeggieTales. We would have to go back a little older than VeggieTales.
There was one called Meggetto.
Yes.
Do you remember Meggetto?
I totally know exactly.
When the guy opened his mouth and he was the Antichrist, and then all those wasps flew out of his mouth. I'm like, I'm not hungry anymore.
Like that. Yeah, like to me, those were cringe-worthy moments.
Or the old Jesus, when Jesus was talking to the disciples, and he had that real like feminine voice, and he's like, "Follow me," and they're like, "Okay." And you're like, "No, don't do it. He's not. That's not him. That's not him.
Don't go that way. Turn around and run."
Jesus isn't Swedish, I promise. He's not white. Run the other way. Yes, they were awful.
You mean he doesn't have blue eyes and blonde hair and wear a beauty sash?
Fun fact, for those of you listening, and in your mind, Jesus is white.
I'm sorry. We're about to burst your bubble. Sit down. If you're driving down the road, pull on the shoulder and put it in park right now. I don't want to be responsible for what happens next.
And if you're like, this doesn't make sense, this is blasphemy. Well, do a little research. Look at the region in which Jesus was born.
Which would be the Middle East.
Jesus was the furthest thing from white. But he's for you, no matter what color you are.
Man,
but I think...
blown.
People are like, wait a minute, my God's white. I'm like, actually, your God is all colors. He put skin on, and the skin he chose to put on wasn't white.
It was not even white in the slightest.
He probably, no, he wasn't white.
I think we may have just burst somebody's bubble. I feel
we're going to have people angry.
Yeah, somebody's going to be sending us one of those angry messages. So just a reminder from the last podcast, if you missed it, you can send us an email at Jason or Amber at IDon'tGiveARip.com. We'll get around to that shortly and answer it for you if you've forgotten.
Fact. So, yeah, that's...
cringeworthy moment was judging people by the TV shows that they like to watch or the movies that they would go to or the things that you would do. Like cringeworthy moment, there was no dancing. Cringeworthy moment, there was no playing cards because cards were of the devil. I remember going on a mission trip in high school and getting reprimanded as I'm sitting at the table with the associate pastor of the church playing rummy because everybody's going to hell because we don't play cards because cards then turn and burn, baby.
Like, what about Uno?
Hell in a handbasket, baby. Hell in a hand. I don't know how else to say it. H to the E double hockey sticks, baby. Talk about cringeworthy in some of the things. No skating, no bowling.
Right. Well, no movies. I remember being told by one of my Sunday school teachers. I know those of you listening, you're going to be like, these people grew up in a weird life. Yeah.
Yes,
and we kind of turned out somewhat normal.
That's still up for question.
I had a Sunday school teacher tell me that if I was in the movie theater when Jesus came back, I wouldn't be able to rise. So everybody else can get through the ceilings of their house, but the ceiling of this movie theater is going to keep you because in our head, your body just like floated up to heaven. Like there was this picture so warped, messed up,
and cringeworthy. Some of the messed up theology.
Yeah,
that sounds like that might be like another conversation for extra shots somewhere down the road,
or even just a grounds for conversation.
Oh, either one.
Yeah,
warped theology. And where do we land? Oh man,
right. What about cringeworthy moments where you had to sell candy bars door to door to go to camp? Okay, so not my proudest moment, but because we were part of a very charismatic church, I was really good at reading my audience at a very early age. If I felt like the person leaned more Baptist, I would say I was from a local Baptist church. Because I didn't feel like they would buy candy bars from. Yeah. Isn't that awful?
You should have been in sales, man. What are you doing in ministry? Why aren't you in sales?
Yeah. Well, you have some weirdos go, she's selling Jesus. No, I'm not. But I felt that way. And cringeworthy moment.
Come on.
When I wanted friends to stay the night on Saturday night, my parents were like, but they have to go to church with you. And your friends went to a Bible church or a Baptist church or whatever. And you knew and you prayed, Lord, please don't let anything weird happen tomorrow at church, or my friend doesn't want to be my friend anymore because they had to come to our weirdo church. And please, I'm still part of a charismatic church.
Totally.
It's not anything like what I grew up in.
No.
But definitely have had to unlearn and relearn a lot of things.
Yes.
Going back to that theology, warped theology thing. But
cringeworthy moment growing up in youth ministry. And being encouraged about the idea of missionary dating altogether. Cringeworthy moment. Missionary dating. Bring your boyfriend or girlfriend to church so they'll get saved. Like talk about cringeworthy. Did you ever have any experience like that growing up?
I didn't like dating boys at our church.
Yeah. Good call.
Yeah. And if I did, I also had a boyfriend not at our church at the same time.
See, what you're saying is you had a couple of side guys at different churches. That's what I hear you saying.
No, they probably weren't at church at all. But So I had a girl when I first got into youth ministry that she was like the queen of missionary dating. She'd bring these like hood rat boys to church.
Yes.
Get them saved. They'd get on fire for God and she'd dump them.
Yep.
We had 6 boys in a matter of a year and a half in our youth ministry that were a result of her.
And they probably hated the youth ministry and hated the experience they had because of that.
What happened was they all hated her and they all became great friends.
So they rallied around a common enemy.
And they actually ended up loving youth ministry, but they had trust issues with girls. So I'm like, that's just her. That's just her.
You're not helping out my case at all. It's like me not helping out your case when I say that you can find your wife in 8th grade in student ministry. Why you still won't let my wife and I come and be a testimony on dating night of how you can find your spouse in 8th grade.
No, you cannot. You can't. If you can't properly wipe your rear end, you cannot find your spouse. Okay, so the missionary dating, I'm anti. I'm just thankful that we had leaders that invested in these kids so they didn't just like give up on God. Okay. Cringeworthy moments. Tracks.
No.
I'm not talking about in your hair.
I know exactly.
Those paper tracks that were like turn or burn.
Turn or burn, or it looked like a fake bill and then you flipped it over on the back and it wasn't really $100 bill. It was like, give your life to Jesus or you're going to hell.
Right. Okay. I'm going to say something that's probably going to upset people. It's okay. I love you. I'm for you. I believe in you, but we're human. Power team.
Power team.
Every little boy in America that's a Christian loved the power team.
Power team. Totally.
These guys coming in their spandex.
Oh, dude.
Ripping phone books.
Rolling up frying pans.
And it's, you got every mom in there going.
Breaking a bat over their knee.
That frying pan.
Oh, yeah.
Bat over their knee.
I'm pretty sure my mom rolled a frying pan up on my hind end.
The rebar.
Oh, yeah. Bending oh, totally.
Yes. And it was like, I used to do drugs. I killed 27 people, but I love Jesus. And I'm going to bend this frying pan. Y'all pray for me. Help me out here. And everybody's like, bend it. And you're like, what is happening?
Yes.
And I think that I was just like, and everybody I knew loved it. My friend married a guy that was on the power team, and the entire groomsmen's party.
Were all power team
members? All the groomsmen were power team.
Did they wear their tights to the wedding?
No, and I made a lot of jokes, and they didn't like it.
They did.
They were all wonderful, true story, wonderful guys. Mm-hmm. But it was just, and he was an amazing guy who my friend married, and just his ministry was amazing. But he was on the actual power team with these other guys, and they met at a power team thing at our church. And they fell in love, and I was just like, is this real life?
Or is this?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Any more cringeworthy moments you can think of?
Cringeworthy moments that I can think of. Oh, man. I think I'm starting to... Oh, no. I got one more. Oh, okay. I just thought of one. Back in the day when church had the pastor come up and preach, and then the rest of the staff had to sit in stage on the chairs up on the stage in front of everybody for the whole entire service while the pastor was preaching.
Yes. Okay, so my dad was that guy sitting up there on the stage, and our pastor, who I will not say his name, he's probably dead. Okay, but I don't know.
We'll leave him nameless, though.
Yeah, but his shirt collar was too tight. And so I want y'all to get this visual. This chicken fat hung out over his collar because he's wearing a suit, and it bless God. It was like,
and it would shake everywhere.
Yes, and he would sit up there. Well, we would get in trouble for talking. Well, not only did I have my mom sitting next to me, my dad's just staring at us the whole time.
Yep.
And he would give my mom this cold look, and she would. There was a nerve. There's a nerve on your shoulder that she could pinch, and I immediately just like went into like a sleeper hold type thing, like with a thumb.
Oh,
she would just pinch, and we would just fall. And I'm like, this is awful. But yeah, they would sit up there, and they're just staring into your soul.
Terrible. Couldn't do it.
Awful. Awful.
That was always one of those cringeworthy moments. It's like, man, even the first church I was in, I had to do that. Sit on stage. Ooh, it was, ooh. That was back when we had the old, transparencies that when you were singing songs, you had to slide out the transparencies. What about when
it was always somebody that put them on backwards?
Yes.
And you're like, we can't read. Okay. Well, I've got another one now that you said that. I have, you know me, I have a huge heart for missions, love missions, lived on the mission field, I would do it again.
Everybody should go.
Everybody should go.
At least one time.
But as a kid, We had missionaries. Thank God that I had family that were healthy missionaries that loved God, loved what they did. But we would have missionaries roll in and they were like, and this is back like 100 years ago when 6 figures was like $1 million.
A bajillion.
And they would stand up there and they're like, I used to make 6 figures. I had a vacation home in this place and this place and this place. We had this many vehicles. Life was wonderful. And then God called. And you're like, that sounds awful. You know, and they're like, and
Why would I
now
want to go do this?
we live in Thailand and we have no money and all we eat is 5 grains of rice a day because we love Jesus. And I remember as a kid praying at night, God, please don't call me on the mission field. Please don't call me on the mission field. That sounds awful. And it wasn't until I got a little older that I realized those people were just miserable cows. It had nothing to do with God's calling. It had to do with the fact they were just miserable.
Miserable people, and everybody need to be miserable with them.
And why is it they always have to come in like in whatever country they served in their outfits?
All
I'm like, why are
up.
you dressed like an Aborigine? Put some clothes on. You are not an Aborigine.
Nope.
Why are you doing that?
So good.
So weird.
And
then you'd have to go. We would have to go to lunch with them. And so other people would look at us like, who are these weirdos that you're with? You're like, I don't know. I'm just here for the free meal. I don't know.
Free food.
Yes. Okay. Can you think of anything else? I know there's a lot I can think of that are not appropriate to say.
I was going to say, I have some, but I don't think it would be best to share them on air.
What are a couple things to redeem cringeworthy? I'll tell you, when they brought donuts to church.
Oh, yes, Lord.
I thought that was a great thing.
Totally would redeem cringeworthy.
When churches started investing in youth and children.
When when we actually started building buildings and rooms for the sole purpose of kids and students, totally.
Fact.
I mean, to me, total fact that made it so nice. When we actually started putting engaging people in the right places to engage with people. Like, to me, when churches finally figured out that if we love on people instead of make them feel guilty, crazy thing.
Like there's this, the grace thing is a real thing. The
grace, like no matter what it was, like when we started living that grace out in a way that invited people to come in and belong before they were maybe people that we thought should belong, they suddenly wanted to. I mean, we laugh at all of these things. Like to me, even I think as much as we cringeworthy about the movies or the cards or the bowling alleys and things that we shouldn't do. I mean, the redeeming fact out of a lot of that is, man, there was still a desire somewhere in there to make sure that we lived a life that honored God and that was a life that represented Him well, and the life that He's called us to live, that apart from the world, like we shouldn't look like the world around us. And so I can appreciate the heart that existed inside of those moments to recognize there was a call for holiness that I mean, I honestly think in today's world we don't like to really. But
I think the call for holiness was misrepresented.
Totally misrepresented.
Like, there was nothing wrong with playing cards.
Yeah, nope.
There was nothing wrong with going bowling or skating or to the movies. It was,
or dancing.
Yeah, right. Okay, so I also think that when the church got to be more relational and discipleship became a priority, it just changed everything.
Totally. When we moved from just sitting in the pews to started getting in circles together.
Yeah, like back when, the early 90s when life groups became a thing.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Totally.
Like, open your home and let people in. And it changed the way people did things.
Sit and be able to have a conversation about what we're learning instead of just you telling me what I'm supposed to think.
Right.
I mean, those were the spaces to me where I think faith started changing, becoming real, because we could have a conversation about it. I mean, and feel like we can give some input and begin to shape some thoughts around something that would actually stick and last.
What are some things that you think every church should have?
Every church.
I think every church should have a gymnasium.
I think.
Or an arena. I know for you, because you're a cowboy, arena.
Come on.
But I love the idea of having something that reaches the community that's not just about your Sunday morning experience.
I think I totally designated kids area, student area that kids and students want to hang out in. Not something that's 70 years old that thought a kid would like it.
Or that was built for a teaching building.
And then we try to turn it in a multi-purpose. Listen, I understand.
If there's a lot of places for kids to hide and do things they shouldn't be doing, you don't need to have kids there.
And I understand not every church is in that space or place to do that. I get it. But start where you're at, man. You can buy us a few things. You can paint a little bit. you can do some things to make those rooms feel like they're dedicated areas. I mean, to me, if you don't make the idea that kids and students are the most invaluable investment that you make in your church, I think that's what every church should do. I think, like you said, anything to get in the, here's my thing, what a church should do. And this is maybe grounds for another conversation at some point. I think the future opportunities for evangelism are found in care ministry, and through helping people that have an addiction find freedom from that addiction, from grief share, from
Celebrate Recovery.
Celebrate Recovery.
It's a fantastic
those types
program.
To me, if you're not doing those things and not fishing inside the walls of your church, but fishing in the community, so to speak, you're missing the opportunity, I feel like, of why the church exists, because Jesus went out and spent time with the people that were broken, jacked up, and lost.
Right.
And I think every church, I mean, again, you may not be able to tackle them all, but you can tackle one.
One thing, right?
One thing. Find one thing and do it.
I got one. You said something that made me think of this. The one last cringeworthy thing in church. Between the mid-'80s to the mid-'90s, every church van requirement was that it broke down on the way to camp.
Oh, man.
Every bus, and I can't tell you how many times I've been to camp.
Yep.
And stranded on the side of a highway in 110-degree weather, no water, nothing to drink, waiting on somebody to come fix a bus that should have been put to rest years before.
A long, long time ago.
And we lived.
And you
barely
have stories to tell about it. Scars, but you got stories too.
We got to camp and all looked like we were coming off the bus at Holes. Remember that movie?
Yes,
we all looked like we were going to.
Shia LaBeouf before he went all cray-cray. Oh gosh!
Well, he's on the podcast next week.
Oh,
so
sweet!
I'm
sorry. I love you.
Okay. Well, once again, thank you for joining me for this extra shot. That's hysterical.
For having me.
And I know that there's some other things you're going to be thinking about in the middle of the night. You'll be like, I have another.
I'll text you later.
Another cringeworthy moment for church. Thank you guys for joining us, and subscribe and stay tuned. We've got more stuff coming. Have a great day.